A cryptic letter lures Hercule Poirot to the fog-shrouded village of St. Aldan, where whispers of a lost sapphire necklace hide a scandal that could shatter the powerful Haverford family. Why does a groundskeeper risk everything to steal secrets? Who is the shadowy stranger hunting the same truth? As a hidden ring reveals a banished heir and a brutal attack threatens to silence the past, Poirot unravels a web of betrayal, loyalty, and lies. Can he expose the truth before the manners? Secrets claim another victim. Dive into a mystery where every clue changes everything. Chapter 1. The whisper in the fog. The rain had ceased, but a thick fog clung to the cobblestones of St. Aldan, a village nestled in the English countryside where time seemed to have paused a century ago. Hercule Poirot, his polished shoes clicking softly against the damp stone, adjusted his overcoat and tilted his hat to shield his meticulously waxed moustache from the mist. He had arrived under the pretense of seeking respite from London's clamour, but the truth was far more tantalizing. A letter, slipped under his door at his London flat 2 days prior, had brought him here. Unsigned, written in a hurried yet elegant hand, it spoke of a secret buried in St. Aldina scandal tied to a prominent family, whispered only in shadows. "The truth lies with the Haverfords," it read, "and it will not stay silent much longer." Poirot, ever the servant of his little grey cells, could not resist. A mystery, cloaked in anonymity, was a challenge to his intellect, a spark to his insatiable curiosity. He had taken the evening train, arriving as dusk bled into night, and now, at the edge of the village square, he stood beneath a flickering gas lamp, observing the world through the fog's gauzy veil. The square was nearly deserted, save for 2 figures huddled near the ivy-covered wall of the Black Boar Inn. Their voices, low and urgent, carried just enough for Poirot's keen ears to catch. He stepped closer, his movements silent as a cat's, and positioned himself behind a weathered oak, its branches heavy with mist. "The heirloom's gone, I tell you," hissed a man's voice, rough with a local accent. "They'll tear the manor apart looking for it." "Keep your voice down, Tom," a woman replied, her tone sharp but trembling. "If Lady Evelyn finds out we've been talking, it's the end for us. That necklace isn't just jewels, it's a key." Poirot's eyebrows lifted. A necklace, a key. His mind whirred, cataloguing the words. The Haverfords, it seemed, were at the heart of this enigma, and already the threads of intrigue were weaving together. He strained to hear more, but the pair fell silent, their silhouettes dissolving into the fog as footsteps approached from the opposite side of the square. Poirot remained still, his breath steady, as a third figure, a tall man in a heavy coat, passed by, oblivious to the detective's presence. The moment was fleeting, but Poirot's instincts flared. The man's gait, purposeful yet cautious, suggested he was no idle villager. Was he connected to the conversation he'd overheard? Poirot made a mental note to investigate further. For now, he needed a foothold in St. Aldan, a way to infiltrate the world of the Haverfords without arousing suspicion. He straightened, brushing a speck of damp leaf from his sleeve, and made his way to the Black Boar Inn. The establishment was modest but charming, its windows glowing with the warm light of a fire. Inside, the air smelled of ale and roasted chestnuts, and a handful of locals sat at wooden tables, their laughter mingling with the clink of glasses. Poirot approached the bar, where a stout innkeeper with a ruddy face polished a tankard. "Bonsoir, Monsieur Poirot," said, his voice smooth as velvet. "I am Hercule Poirot, lately of London, seeking a room and perhaps some local wisdom." The innkeeper, who introduced himself as Mr. Billings, eyed Poirot with a mix of curiosity and wariness. A Londoner, I don't get many of your sort. In St. Aldan, room's yours for a fair price. As for wisdom, depends what you're after. Poirot smiled, his eyes twinkling with calculated charm. I am a man of simple tastes, monsieur, but I confess a fondness for stories. This village, it has the air of secrets, Nan. Perhaps you know of the Haverfords. I hear they are a family of note. Billings snorted, setting the tankard down with a thud. Note, aye, but not all of it good. Haverford Manor sits up on the hill, grand as you like, but there's whispers about old scandals, missing jewels, that sort of thing. Lady Evelyn runs the place like a queen, but her son Charles keeps to himself. And that niece of hers, Clara, well, she's a firebrand, always stirring up talk. Poirot nodded, committing the names to memory. Lady Evelyn, Charles, Clara. The cast was forming, each player a potential piece in the puzzle. And this missing jewel, he ventured, it is a topic of much discussion, perhaps. Billings leaned closer, his voice dropping. The sapphire necklace, they call it. Been in the family for generations. Word is, it vanished years ago, but some say it's still in the manor, hidden away. Others think it's cursed, tied to some dark business from the old days. Mind you, I don't put stock in curses, but folk here love a good tale. Most intriguing, Poirot murmured, his mind racing. A necklace, possibly a key to a greater secret, and a family cloaked in whispers. He thanked Billings, secured a room, and retired for the night, though sleep was far from his intentions. In his small, tidy room, he sat at a desk, lit a single candle, and spread the anonymous letter before him. The handwriting was feminine, he noted, with a flourish that suggested education but a tremor that hinted at fear. Whoever had written it knew enough to trust Poirot, but not enough to reveal themselves. The next morning, St. Aldan awoke under a sky of pale grey, the fog lingering like a reluctant guest. Poirot, dressed impeccably in a charcoal suit, set out for Haverford Manor. The walk took him through winding lanes, past stone cottages and a crumbling church, until the manor came into view, a sprawling Georgian structure, its windows like unblinking eyes. Ivy clung to its walls, and the gardens, though well kept, had an air of melancholy, as if mourning a lost splendour at the wrought iron gate. Poirot was met by a stern-faced butler, who introduced himself as Mr. Harrow. State your business, sir, he said, his tone clipped. Poirot produced a card, his name embossed in elegant script. Hercule Poirot, at your service. I am a visitor to St. Aldan, and I have heard much of the Haverford family's hospitality. I wish to pay my respects to Lady Evelyn, if she is receiving. Harrow's eyes narrowed, but he took the card and disappeared into the manor. Moments later, he returned, his expression unchanged. Her ladyship will see you in the drawing-room. Poirot was led through a grand hall, its walls adorned with portraits of stern-faced Haverfords, their eyes seeming to follow him. The drawing-room was a study in faded opulence, velvet curtains, a crystal chandelier, and a fireplace that crackled softly. Lady Evelyn Haverford, a woman of perhaps 60, sat in a her-backed chair, her silver hair pinned tightly, her gaze sharp as a blade. Monsieur Poirot, she said, her voice cool but polite, your reputation precedes you. To what do we owe this unexpected visit? Poirot bowed slightly, his smile disarming. Madame, I am a man who seeks beauty and truth, and St. Aldan has both in abundance. I am told your family is the heart of this village, and I wished to make your acquaintance. I am, how you say, a collector of stories." Lady Evelyn's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "Stories, Monsieur Poirot. We have no shortage of those, but they are seldom as charming as one might hope. St. Aldan is a quiet place, and we prefer it that way." Before Poirot could respond, the door opened, and a young woman entered. Clara, he presumed. Her auburn hair was loosely pinned, and her green eyes sparkled with a mix of defiance and curiosity. "Aunt Evelyn, must you scare off every visitor?" she said, her tone teasing but edged with challenge. She turned to Poirot. "I'm Clara Haverford, and you're not here for the scenery, are you?" Poirot chuckled, delighted by her boldness. "Mademoiselle, you are perceptive. I confess I am drawn to the mysteries of this world, and St. Aldan seems to have its share." Clara's eyes narrowed, but a smile played at her lips. "You'll find plenty of those here, monsieur. Just don't expect them to unravel easily." Lady Evelyn rose, her expression tightening. "Clara, enough. Monsieur Poirot, you are welcome to join us for tea tomorrow. We are hosting a small gathering, and you may find our village illuminating." Poirot accepted with a gracious nod, sensing the undercurrent of tension between aunt and niece. As he left the manor, he glanced back, catching Clara watching him from a window, her expression unreadable. The fog had thickened, but his mind was clear. The Haverfords were hiding something, and the necklace was only the beginning. Back at the Black Boar, Poirot lingered in the common room, nursing a glass of sherry. The locals were more talkative now, warmed by ale and the fire's glow. A grizzled farmer, his hands calloused from years of work, leaned toward Poirot. "Heard you were up at the manor," he said. "Mind yourself with that lot. The Haverfords don't take kindly to outsiders poking about." "Mercy," Monsieur Poirot replied, his tone light, "but I am a man who respects boundaries, unless they conceal the truth." The farmer laughed, but his eyes darted nervously to the door. Poirot followed his gaze, noting the tall man from the previous night entering the inn. Their eyes met briefly, and Poirot sensed a flicker of recognition. Was it weariness? The man ordered a drink and sat alone, his coat still damp from the fog. As the evening wore on, Poirot pieced together fragments of village gossip. The necklace, it seemed, was more than a jewellet, was a symbol of the Haverford legacy, rumoured to hold a secret that could ruin them. Some said it was stolen, others that it was hidden by Lady Evelyn's late husband. Poirot's thoughts returned to the anonymous letter. Who had sent it, and why now? By the time he retired to his room, the candle burning low, Poirot had resolved to attend the Haverfords' tea. It would be the perfect opportunity to observe the family and their circle, to listen for the whispers that betrayed secrets. He lay in bed, the fog pressing against the window, and smiled to himself. The game had begun, and Hercule Poirot was never one to lose. The chapter closed with Poirot dreaming of sapphires glinting in the mist, each facet reflecting a truth yet to be uncovered. Tomorrow he would step deeper into the Haverfords' world, and the fog of St. Aldan would begin to lift. Chapter 2. Shadows of the Haverford Legacy. The morning sun pierced the fog of St. Aldan, casting a golden sheen over Haverford Manor as Hercule Poirot approached for the promised tea. His polished cane tapped rhythmically against the gravel path, a counterpoint to the distant cawing of crows. The anonymous letter, now tucked safely in his breast pocket, weighed heavily on his mind. Its cryptic words, "The truth lies with the Haverfords," had drawn him into a web of secrets, and Yesterday's encounter with Lady Evelyn and Clara had only tightened the strands. The mention of a missing sapphire necklace, overheard in the village square, hinted at a deeper mystery, one Poirot was determined to unravel. The manor's heavy oak doors swung open, revealing Mr. Harrow, the butler, whose stern demeanour had softened only slightly since their last meeting. "Monsieur Poirot, her ladyship awaits you in the conservatory," he said, leading the way through a labyrinth of corridors adorned with tapestries, faded by time. The air carried the faint scent of lavender and old wood, a testament to the manor's age and grandeur. The conservatory was a glass-domed haven, filled with exotic plants and the hum of bees drawn to blooming orchids. Lady Evelyn sat at a Rottian table, her posture regal, her navy dress impeccable. Beside her was a man in his 30s, pale and slight, with a nervous habit of adjusting his cufflinks. This, Poirot deduced, was Charles Haverford, the son Billings had described as withdrawn. Clara, vibrant in a cream blouse and emerald skirt, stood near a potted fern, her eyes scanning Poirot with a mix of amusement and suspicion. "Monsieur Poirot, welcome," Lady Evelyn said, gesturing to a chair. "This is my son, Charles. You've met Clara, of course. I trust you'll find our little gathering pleasant." Poirot bowed, his smile calculated to charm. "Madame, your hospitality is a delight. I am eager to know more of your charming family and this magnificent estate." Charles offered a thin smile, his voice soft. "We don't often have visitors, Monsieur Poirot. St. Aldan is out of the way. Yet it has a certain allure," Poirot replied, settling into his chair. "The history of such a place, it speaks, Nan. I am told the Haverfords have deep roots here." Clara laughed, a bright sound that cut through the room's formality. "Roots or chains, depending on who you ask. This manor's full of stories, but not all of them are fit for tea." Lady Evelyn's eyes flashed, but she maintained her composure. "Clara, mind your tongue. Monsieur Poirot is our guest." As the tea was served delicate porcelain cups and a silver pot steaming with Earl Grey, Poirot observed the dynamics. Charles fidgeted, avoiding eye contact, while Clara's boldness seemed too great on her aunt. Lady Evelyn, meanwhile, steered the conversation toward mundane topics: the village's harvest festival, the weather, the restoration of the church steeple. But Poirot's little grey cells were alert, catching the when he mentioned the villagers' gossip about a missing necklace. Charles's cup clattered against its saucer, and Lady Evelyn's hand paused mid-pour. "A necklace," Lady Evelyn said, her tone light but edged with steel. "Village tales. Monsieur Poirot, we've no such trinkets here." Clara leaned forward, her green eyes gleaming. "Oh, come now, Aunt Evelyn. Everyone knows about the sapphire necklace. Grandfather used to say it was the heart of the Haverford legacy. Pity it vanished before I was born." Clara Charles murmured, his voice barely audible. "That's enough." Poirot noted the exchange, his mind cataloguing the tension. The necklace was no mere rumour, was a wound, still raw. He shifted tactics, complimenting the conservatory's beauty and asking about the manor's history. Lady Evelyn relaxed slightly, recounting tales of her ancestors' rise to prominence. But Poirot sensed omissions, gaps where the truth lay buried. As the tea concluded, Clara offered to show Poirot the library, a gesture Lady Evelyn permitted, with a tight nod. The library was a cavernous room, its walls lined with leather-bound volumes and portraits of stern-faced Haverfords. Clara closed the door behind them, her demeanour shifting to one of quiet urgency. You're not here for tea and stories, are you, Monsieur Poirot? She said, crossing her arms. I saw it in your eyes yesterday. You're after something. Poirot tilted his head, his expression unreadable. Mademoiselle, you are direct. I admire this. I am, perhaps, curious about the whispers that surround your family. The necklace, for instance, seems to hold great significance. Clara's gaze flickered to a portrait of a woman in a sapphire blue gown, her neck bare. It's more than a jewel. It's a secret, one even I don't fully understand. Aunt Evelyn won't speak of it, and Charles, well, he's too scared to ask. And you, Mademoiselle Clara, are you not afraid? She smiled, a mix of defiance and unease. I'm curious, like you. But curiosity can be dangerous here. Be careful what you dig up. Before Poirot could press further, a faint creak echoed from the corridor. Clara froze, her eyes darting to the door. Someone's listening, she whispered. Poirot moved swiftly, his steps silent, and opened the door. The corridor was empty, but a faint scent of tobacco lingered, a clue to an unseen presence. He returned to Clara, who was now rifling through a desk drawer, her movements quick and purposeful. If you're going to poke around, start here, she said, pulling out a small, leather-bound diary. It belonged to my mother's aunt, Beatrice. She died before I was born, but she wrote about the necklace. I've never shown it to anyone. Poirot took the diary, its pages yellowed and brittle. Mademoiselle, this is most generous. May I ask why you trust me with such a treasure? Clara hesitated, then met his gaze. Because you're not from St. Aldan. You don't owe anyone here. And I think you'll find the truth, whatever it is. Poirot slipped the diary into his coat, promising to return it. As they left the library, he caught a glimpse of movement in the gardener figure in a dark coat, too distant to identify. His instincts prickled. Someone was watching, and the stakes were higher than he'd anticipated. That evening, back at the Black Boar Inn, Poirot sat by his room's small window, the diary open before him. The firelight danced across Beatrice's elegant script, her words painting a picture of a family torn by ambition and betrayal. One passage stood out. The sapphire is not what it seems. It guards a truth that could shatter us. I've hidden it where no Haverford will look, lest the past reclaim us. Poirot closed the diary, his mind ablaze. The necklace was no mere heirloom. It was a key to a secret, perhaps one tied to the anonymous letter. Beatrice's words suggested it was still in the manor, hidden deliberately. But why? And who had overheard his conversation with Clara? The figure in the garden, the tobacco scent, the nervous Charles, the guarded Lady Evelyn were pieces in a puzzle that was only beginning to take shape. He leaned back, sipping a tisane he'd requested from Mr. Billings, and let his little grey cells work. The tea had been a success, not for its pleasantries, but for the cracks it revealed in the Haverford facade. Clara's boldness, Charles's unease, and Lady Evelyn's control were all clues, as was the diary's cryptic warning. Tomorrow he would return to the manor, probing deeper, perhaps under the guise of admiring their art collection. For now, he was content. The mystery had taken root, and Poirot was never one to let a root grow unchecked. As he extinguished the candle, the fog outside seemed to pulse with secrets, each waiting for Hercule Poirot to bring it into the light. The chapter closed with the diary resting on his bedside table, its pages a silent promise of revelations to come. Chapter 3. The diaries riddle. The dawn broke over St. Aldan with a reluctant light. the fog thinning to reveal a landscape of dukest fields and shadowed hedgerows. Hercule Poirot, ever meticulous, rose early, his mind already turning over. The clues gathered from Haverford Manor, Beatrice's diary, entrusted to him by Clara, lay on the desk in his room at the Black Boar. In its pages, a tantalizing map to the Haverford family's secrets. The sapphire necklace, described as a guardian of truth, was hidden somewhere in the manor, according to Beatrice's cryptic words. But what truth did it guard? And why had someone been eavesdropping on his conversation with Clara in the library? The scent of tobacco and the fleeting figure in the garden lingered in his thoughts, urging him to act. After a breakfast of perfectly poached eggs and toast, Poirot insisted on precision. Even in provincial kitchens, he set out to unravel the diary's riddle. Beatrice's entries, written in a flowing script, hinted at a scandal from decades past, a forbidden romance, a child sent away, and a necklace that was more than a jewel. One passage, circled in faded ink, read, "The sapphire rests where the heart of the manor weeps beneath the gaze of those who came before." Poirot's little grey cells hummed. The heart of the manor suggested a central or symbolic location, and those who came before pointed to ancestors, perhaps the portraits in the manor's halls, but weeps. That required investigation. His destination was the old orphanage on the outskirts of St. Aldan, mentioned in a later entry as the place where the child of the illicit romance had been sent. The building, now abandoned, was a mile from the village, its path winding through a copse of gnarled yews. As Poirot walked, his cane sinking slightly into the damp earth, he noted the stillness of the morning, broken only by the rustle of leaves and the distant bleat of sheep. Yet he felt watched, a sensation that prickled his neck. Turning, he saw nothing but the mist curling round the trees. Still, he quickened his pace, his senses sharp. The orphanage loomed ahead, a squat stone structure, with broken windows and ivy choking its walls. The door hung ajar, creaking as Poirot pushed it open. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the floorboards groaned under his weight. Faded wallpaper peeled in strips, and a cracked mirror reflected his silhouette, a solitary figure in a place of forgotten stories. He moved methodically, searching for traces of the past. In a corner, beneath a pile of mouldering hymnals, he found a wooden box, its lid carved with a simple cross. Inside the box was a photograph, yellowed but intact. It showed a young woman, perhaps 20, with auburn hair and striking green eyes, features eerily similar to Clara's. On the back, in a childish scrawl, were the words, "Lillian, 1898. Poirot's pulse quickened. Lillian, he suspected, was Beatrice's sister, the one who had loved unwisely and paid the price. The orphanage was no coincidence. It was a link to the Haverfords' buried shame. But why had Beatrice hidden the necklace, and how did it connect to this lost child? As he pocketed the photograph, a floorboard creaked behind him. Poirot spun, his cane raised, but the room was empty. Yet the air felt charged, as if someone had just fled. He stepped to the window, catching a glimpse of movement, shadow darting into the trees. The watcher was close, and Poirot's instincts told him they were no mere villager. He made a mental note to inquire about strangers in St. Aldan, perhaps. The man in the heavy coat he'd seen at the inn, returning to the village. Poirot stopped at the church, its steeple under repair as Lady Evelyn had mentioned. The vicar, a wiry man with spectacles perched on his nose, was sorting hymnals in the vestry. Poirot introduced himself, weaving a tale of historical curiosity about the village's past. "This orphanage," he said, "it must have been a place of many stories. Do records remain of its children?" The vicar, Mr. Tate, nodded thoughtfully. "Some, though they're incomplete. The orphanage closed in 1905 after a fire. Most records were lost, but I have a ledger from the late 1890s. Would you like to see it?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Monsieur, you were most kind." The ledger, dusty and brittle, listed names of children admitted to the orphanage. Poirot's finger traced the pages until he found it. Lillian Haverford, admitted 1898, age 3, mother deceased, father unknown. The entry was sparse, but it confirmed the photograph's significance. Lillian's child, perhaps Clara's mother, had been cast out, and the necklace was tied to this act of betrayal. But where was it hidden? Back at the inn, Poirot retreated. To his room, the diary and photographs spread before him. He cross-referenced Beatrice's words with the manor's layout, recalled from his visit. The heart of the manor could be the central hall, where the family portraits hung, their eyes watching over generations. Weeps was less clear perhaps, a metaphor for sorrow, or something more literal, like a fountain or a leak. He resolved to return to the manor, using the pretext of admiring its architecture to search for clues. That afternoon, he sent a note to Lady Evelyn, requesting a tour of the manor's historic features. Her reply was prompt, inviting him for dinner. Poirot dressed with care, choosing a suit of midnight blue, his moustache waxed to perfection. At the manor, he was greeted by Clara, whose smile was warmer than before. "You're persistent, Monsieur Poirot," she said, leading him to the dining room. "I hope you're finding what you came for." "Truth, mademoiselle, is a patient," Quarry Poirot replied, "and your home is a treasure trove." Dinner was a formal affair, with Lady Evelyn presiding over a table set with silver and crystal. Charles was present, his pallor more pronounced, and a new face joined them. Dr. Marsden, the village physician, a jovial man with a penchant for local history. Poirot steered the conversation toward the manor's past, probing gently. "These portraits," he said, gesturing to the hall visible through an archway, "they are magnificent. Do they hold stories of your ancestors?" Lady Evelyn's smile was tight. "They're a reminder of duty, Monsieur Poirot. The Haverfords have always served St. Alden, though not without cost." Dr. Marsden chimed in, his voice hearty. "Oh, they've had their dramas. There's a tale about a missing necklace sapphires, wasn't it? Caused quite a stir in your grandfather's day, Lady Evelyn." Charles coughed, spilling a drop of wine, and Lady Evelyn's fork paused. "A trifle," she said. "Lost to time, like so many things." Poirot noted the reactions, his mind racing. After dinner, Clara offered to show him the portrait gallery, and he seized the chance. The hall was lined with paintings, their subjects stern and imposing. One portrait, of a woman in a sapphire blue gown, caught his eye, the same woman from the library portrait Clara had glanced at. Beatrice, Clara confirmed softly. She was different. Never married, always writing in that diary of hers. Poirot studied the portrait, noting a faint crack in the frame near the bottom. "Mademoiselle, may I?" He ran his fingers along the crack, feeling a slight give. With a gentle push, a small panel opened, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a single key, tarnished but intact, engraved with a tiny sapphire. Clara gasped, but before she could speak, footsteps echoed behind them. It was Mr. Harrow, his face impassive. Her ladyship requests your presence in the drawing-room, Mademoiselle Clara. Clara nodded, her eyes wide, and Poirot slipped the key into his pocket. As they returned to the drawing-room, he felt the weight of unseen eyes, the same sensation. From the orphanage, someone was tracking his movements, and the key was a breakthrough they might not want him to have. The evening ended with polite farewells, but Poirot's mind was alight. The key, he suspected, unlocked something tied to the necklace's hiding place, perhaps a chest or a door where the manor weeps. Beatrice's riddle was clearer now, but the watcher's presence added urgency. Who were they protecting or silencing? As he walked back to the inn, the fog closing in once more, Poirot clutched the key, its cold metal a promise of answers. The chapter closed with him glancing over his shoulder, the shadows of St. Aldan alive with secrets, and the certainty that someone, somewhere, was watching his every step. Chapter 4. The stranger at the inn. The fog of St. Aldan clung to the morning like a persistent memory, its tendrils curling round the black boar in as Hercule Poirot sat by his window, the tarnished key from Beatrice's portrait glinting in the pale light. The discovery of the key, hidden in the manor's portrait gallery, had sharpened his focus. It was a tangible clue, a piece of the puzzle tied to the sapphire necklace and the Haverford family's buried secrets. Beatrice's diary, with its cryptic reference to where the manor weeps, suggested the key unlocked something significant, perhaps the necklace itself, or a truth that could unravel the family's legacy. But the sensation of being watched, first at the orphanage and then at the manor, gnawed at Poirot. Someone was tracking his progress, and the arrival of a stranger in the village was no coincidence. Poirot dressed with his usual precision, choosing a suit of dove grey that complemented the sombre mood of the day. He slipped the key and Beatrice's diary into his pocket, alongside the photograph of Lillian Haverford, and descended to the inn's common room. The air was thick with the scent of bacon and fresh bread, but Poirot's appetite was for information. Mr. Billings, the innkeeper, was polishing glasses behind the bar, his ruddy face creased with a welcoming grin. "Morning, Monsieur Poirot," Billings said. "Sleep well, or did the village ghosts keep you up?" Poirot smiled, his eyes sharp. "The ghosts of St. Aldan are most discreet, monsieur, but I find the living far more intriguing. Tell me, have any new visitors arrived at your fine establishment?" Billings leaned closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "As it happens, we do. A fellow checked in last night, Mr. Grayson, calls himself, says he's a historian, poking about for old stories. Keeps to himself, but he's been asking about the Haverfords, same as you." Poirot's moustache twitched. A historian, arriving just as he began to unravel the Haverford mystery. The timing was suspicious. "And where might I find this, Monsieur Grayson?" Billings nodded toward the corner of the room, where a man sat alone, hunched over a notebook. He was the tall figure Poirot had seen in the village square, his heavy coat now draped over a chair, revealing a lean frame and sharp features. His dark hair was streaked with grey, and his eyes darted nervously as he scribbled. Poirot approached, his demeanour polished and disarming. "Monsieur Grayson, I presume. I am Hercule Poirot, a visitor to this charming village. I hear you share my interest in its history." Grayson looked up, his expression guarded but polite. "Poirot, the detective. I've read about you. I'm just a scholar, digging into local folklore. St. Aldan's got its share of families, lost treasures, that sort of thing." "Indeed," Poirot said, settling into a chair opposite Grayson. I, too, am captivated by such stories. The Haverfords, for instance, their sapphire necklace is the subject of much talk. Have you uncovered anything of note? Grayson's pen paused, a flicker of unease crossing his face. Just rumors. It's said to be a family heirloom, lost or stolen years ago. I'm more interested in the manor's architecture, though. Georgian, with some unusual features. Poirot nodded, noting the deflection. Grayson was hiding something, his answers too rehearsed. Their conversation was cut short when a young serving girl, her apron stained with flour, rushed into the room, her face pale. Mr. Billings. Someone's been in Mr. Grayson's room. His papers are all over the floor. Grayson leapt to his feet, his composure cracking. My notes. He bolted upstairs, Poirot following at a measured pace, his mind already piecing together the implications. A theft, so soon after his own discoveries at the manor, suggested someone was desperate to control the flow of information. Grayson's room was in disarray, scattered. Drawers ajar, but nothing appeared missing except a small notebook. Grayson clutched after a frantic search. It's all here, he muttered, though his eyes betrayed relief too quick to be genuine. Poirot, observing from the doorway, noted a smudge of dirt on the windowsill, fresh and out of place in the otherwise tidy inn. An unfortunate incident, Poirot said, his tone sympathetic but probing. Perhaps, Monsieur Grayson, you have stirred the same curiosity as I have. The Haverford's secrets, they do not rest easily, Nan. Grayson forced a laugh. Just a prank, I'm sure. Village lads, probably. I'll be more careful. Poirot excused himself, but his suspicions deepened. The theft was no prank, was targeted, likely to uncover what Grayson knew about the necklace. The dirt on the windowsill suggested an outsider, someone familiar with the inn's layout. Poirot resolved to set a trap, one that would reveal the thief without exposing his own hand. That afternoon he visited the village postmaster, a wiry woman named Mrs. Tuttle, whose sharp eyes missed little, under the guise of sending a letter. To London, Poirot inquired about local gossip. A theft at the inn is most distressing, he said. Have there been other such incidents? Mrs. Tuttle sniffed, sorting envelopes with practiced efficiency. Not common, but not unheard of. Folks say it's the groundskeeper from Haverford Manor, Ned Cole. He's got a grudge against the family, something about his father being sacked. Years ago, he's been seen skulking about at odd hours. Poirot thanked her, his mind turning. Ned Cole, a groundskeeper with a motive, fit the profile of the thief and, perhaps, the watcher. He devised a plan. He would leave a decoy in his own room, a sealed envelope marked Haverford Notes, filled with blank pages, and watch from a vantage point. If Ned took the bait, Poirot would have his culprit. That evening, as the inn settled into a quiet hum, Poirot positioned himself in the shadows of the stable yard, a vantage point with a clear view of his room's window. The fog had returned, cloaking the village in an eerie silence. Hours passed, the cold seeping into his bones, but Poirot's patience was rewarded. A figure, broad-shouldered and clad in a worn jacket, crept toward the inn's rear entrance. The man moved with purpose, scaling a drainpipe to reach Poirot's window with surprising agility. Poirot waited until the figure slipped inside, then moved swiftly, entering the inn through a side door and ascending the stairs. He flung open his room's door to find Ned Cole, the groundskeeper, clutching the decoy envelope. Ned's weathered face twisted in surprise, his hands raised defensively. Monsieur Cole, Poirot said, his voice calm but commanding. "You are, how you say, caught in the act. Why do you steal what does not belong to you?" Ned's shoulders slumped, his defiance fading. "I didn't mean no harm, sir. I heard you was asking about the necklace, same as that Grayson fellow, I thought. If I could find out what you knew, I could use it. The Haverfords owe my family." "Oh, you." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Explain, s'il vous plaît." Ned hesitated, then spoke in a low rush. "My father worked the manor grounds for 30 years. When he caught wind of something a secret about that necklace, he was sacked. No explanation. It broke him. I've been looking for proof ever since. Something to make M pay." Poirot studied Ned, noting the bitterness in his voice. "And what secret do you believe this necklace holds?" Ned shook his head. "I don't know exactly, but it's tied to old Mr. Haverford's time. Something about a deal gone wrong, a betrayal. The necklace ain't just jewels, it's leverage." Poirot pocketed the decoy envelope, gesturing for Ned to sit. "You will tell me all you know, Monsieur Cole, and perhaps we may help each other. But first, you will return what you took from Monsieur Grayson." Ned nodded, producing Grayson's stolen notebook from his jacket. Poirot took it, his mind racing. The notebook, he suspected, held clues to Grayson's true purpose, and Ned's story hinted at a deeper conspiracy. The necklace was no mere heirloom. It was a symbol of a bargain, perhaps one that had cost lives and legacies. As he escorted Ned from the room, Poirot glanced at the fog-shrouded village. The trap had sprung, revealing a man driven by vengeance. But the true puppet, master, remained hidden. Grayson's role was unclear, and the key in Poirot's pocket burned with possibility. Tomorrow he would confront Grayson with the notebook, testing his story, and return to the manor to find where the manor weeps. The chapter closed with Poirot standing at his window, the fog a mirror to the mystery, and the certainty that each step brought him closer to a truth someone was desperate to bury. Chapter 5. The trap springs. The morning light struggled through the fog, casting St. Aldan in a muted glow as Hercule Poirot sat in his room at the Black Boar Inn, the stolen notebook of Mr. Grayson opened before him. The capture of Ned Cole, the Haverford groundskeeper, had confirmed Poirot's suspicions of a village alive with secrets, but the notebook promised deeper insights. Its pages were filled with meticulous notes on the Haverford family, their lineage, and the sapphire necklace, with cryptic references to a transaction in 1897. Grayson's supposed role as a historian seemed increasingly dubious. Notes were less academic and more investigative, as if he were hunting for something specific. Poirot's trap had revealed Ned's motives, rooted in a family grudge, but Grayson's purpose remained a shadow in the mist. Poirot tucked the notebook into his coat, alongside Beatrice's diary and the tarnished key from the portrait gallery. Ned's confession that the necklace was tied to a betrayal in old Mr. Haverford's time aligned with Beatrice's cryptic diary entries about a truth that could shatter the family. The key, Poirot suspected, would unlock the hiding place of the necklace, perhaps in the manor's weeping heart. But first, he needed to confront Grayson, whose stolen notebook was now in Poirot's possession, a leverage point to test. The man's story. He descended to the inn's common room, where Grayson sat at his usual corner table, his face drawn with worry. Poirot approached, his demeanor polished but with a steel edge. "Monsieur Grayson, a word, if you please," he said, sliding the notebook across the table. "I believe this belongs to you." Grayson's eyes widened, his fingers twitching toward the notebook. How did you get this? Poirot smiled, his moustache curling slightly. A little bird, monsieur, or rather a groundskeeper with a penchant for thievery. Ned Cole, I believe, thought your notes held value. I am curious why does a historian provoke such interest? Grayson's composure faltered, his voice low. I told you, I'm researching local history. The Haverfords are a prominent family, and their stories are complex. Complex, oui, but your notes suggest more than scholarly curiosity. Poirot said, tapping the notebook. You write of a transaction, a date 1897. What is it you seek, Monsieur Grayson, and for whom? Grayson hesitated, then leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm no historian, Poirot. I'm a private investigator, hired to find the sapphire necklace. My client believes it's still in the manor, and it's worth a fortune, not just in jewels, but in what it conceals. Poirot's eyes gleamed. And what might that be? Grayson shook his head. I don't know the details. My client's secretive, but they're convinced the necklace holds proof of a deal that could ruin the Haverfords. I'm just following the trail. Poirot filed away the revelation, his mind racing. Grayson's client was an unknown player, adding a new layer to the mystery. Before he could press further, the inn's door burst open, and Clara Haverford strode in, her auburn hair catching the light. Her expression was a mix of urgency and defiance. Monsieur Poirot, she said, ignoring Grayson. Aunt Evelyn wants you at the manor now. She's not happy about your inquiries. Poirot rose, bowing slightly. Mademoiselle, I am at her ladyship's service. Monsieur Grayson, we shall continue our discussion, Nan, at Haverford Manor. The air was thick with tension. Lady Evelyn awaited in the drawing-room, her silver hair gleaming under the chandelier, her eyes cold as winter. Charles stood by the fireplace, his hands clasped tightly, while Mr. Harrow hovered near the door, his presence a silent warning. Monsieur Poirot, Lady Evelyn began, her voice clipped. I invited you into my home out of courtesy, but I hear you've been stirring trouble in the village, questioning my staff, meddling in matters that don't concern you. Poirot met her gaze, unflinching. Madame, I seek only the truth, which is, I believe, a concern to us all. The sapphire necklace, for instance, it is a subject of much fascination, yet you dismiss it as a trifle. Why, I wonder? Lady Evelyn's lips tightened. You overstep, sir. That necklace is a myth, a story villagers tell to amuse themselves. I'll thank you to leave it be. Charles shifted, his voice barely audible. Mother, perhaps we should. Enough, Charles. Lady Evelyn snapped. Monsieur Poirot, I must ask you to cease your inquiries. The Haverfords value their privacy. Poirot inclined his head, his tone smooth. I respect your wishes, madame, but the truth, it has a way of surfacing, none. I shall trouble you no further today. As he left the drawing-room, Clara caught up with him in the hall, her voice low. You've rattled her, monsieur. She's not used to being challenged. What did you find in the diary? Poirot hesitated, then decided to trust her boldness. A key, mademoiselle, hidden in your aunt's portrait. It may lead to the necklace, but I suspect it unlocks more than a jewel. Tell me, does the manor have a place that weeps? Clara frowned, then her eyes widened. The old fountain in the courtyard, it's been dry for years, but there's a sealed chamber beneath it. Grandfather called it the manor's heart, said it held secrets. Could that be it? Poirot's pulse quickened. Perhaps, mademoiselle, I must see this fountain. Under the guise of admiring the gardens, Clara led him to the courtyard, where a stone fountain stood, its basin cracked and moss-covered. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth. Poirot examined the base, noting a rusted grate. The key fit perfectly, turning with a groan to reveal a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Before they could explore, a shout echoed from the manor. Mr. Harrow appeared, his face flushed. "Mademoiselle Clara, your aunt insists you return." At once, Clara glanced at Poirot, her expression torn. "Go," he said softly. "I shall manage." Alone, Poirot descended the staircase, his pocket torch casting a thin beam. The chamber was small, its walls damp and etched with faint carvings Haverford crests, intertwined with unfamiliar symbols. In the center stood a wooden chest, its lock matching the key. Inside, he found a velvet pouch containing a sapphire necklace, its stones dull with age but unmistakable. Tucked beside it was a folded letter, its wax seal broken, addressed to Beatrice. Poirot read swiftly, his heart pounding. The letter, dated 1897, was from a man named Edward, confessing to selling the original necklace to cover debts and replacing it with a replica to hide the truth from the family. "Forgive me," it read, "but the shame would destroy us." The implications were staggering. The necklace Lady Evelyn dismissed was a fake, a secret Beatrice had guarded to protect the family's honor. As he pocketed the letter, a shadow moved at the chamber's entrance. Poirot spun, his torch illuminating Ned Cole, his face grim. "You found it," Ned said, his voice low. "That necklace is my family's justice." "Hand it over, Poirot." Poirot's hand tightened on his cane. "Monsieur Cole, you mistake me for a man who yields to threats. This necklace is evidence, and I shall not part with it." Ned lunged, but Poirot sidestepped, his agility surprising for his stature. The groundskeeper stumbled, and Poirot seized the moment, slipping past him and up the stairs. He emerged into the courtyard, the fog swallowing his silhouette, and locked the grate behind him, trapping Ned below. Breathing heavily, Poirot clutched the necklace and letter, his mind racing. The trap had sprung again, revealing the necklace's truth. But Lady Evelyn's demand to stop his investigation suggested she knew more than she admitted. Ned's desperation pointed to a broader conspiracy, and Grayson's client loomed as an unseen force. The chapter closed with Poirot striding back to the inn, the fog a cloak around him, determined to protect the necklace and confront the Haverfords with the truth of their legacy. Chapter 6. A Dance of Deceptions. The fog of St. Aldan swelled like a conspirator, as Hercule Poirot made his way back to the Black Boar in the sapphire necklace and Edward's letter safely concealed in his coat. The discovery in the manor's hidden chamber had confirmed Beatrice's diary. The necklace was a replica, a secret guarded to shield the Haverford family from ruin. Ned Cole's attempt to seize it had only deepened Poirot's resolve to uncover the full truth. The groundskeeper's desperation, Grayson's dubious role as a private investigator, and Lady Evelyn's insistence that he cease his inquiries pointed to a web of deception, with the necklace at its center. Tonight, the Haverfords were hosting a village ball, and Poirot saw it as the perfect stage to observe the players in this intricate drama. He arrived at the manor as dusk settled, the windows aglow with candlelight. The ball was a rare event, a nod to tradition that drew villagers and local gentry alike. Poirot, impeccable in a black tailcoat, his moustache waxed to perfection, entered the grand ballroom. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over polished floors, where couples swayed to a string quartet's mournful waltz. Lady Evelyn, resplendent in a burgundy gown, greeted guests with practiced grace, while Charles lingered near a pillar, his eyes darting nervously. Clara, in a sapphire blue dress that echoed Beatrice's portrait, moved through the crowd with a restless energy, her gaze locking onto Poirot's. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, gliding over, "you look like a man who's found something he shouldn't." Poirot smiled, his eyes twinkling. "Mademoiselle Clara, you are as perceptive as ever. But tonight I am merely a guest, here to enjoy the elegance of your family's hospitality." Clara's lips curved, but her voice was low. "Don't play coy with me. I saw you leave the courtyard yesterday, and you weren't empty-handed. What did you find?" Before Poirot could respond, a murmur rippled through the crowd. Mr. Grayson had entered, uninvited, his heavy coat replaced by an ill-fitting suit that marked him as an outsider. Lady Evelyn's smile faltered, and Charles's hands clenched. Poirot noted the tension, his mind cataloguing each reaction. Grayson's presence was a bold move, one that suggested he, too, was closing in on the necklace's secret. As the music swelled, Clara pulled Poirot onto the dance floor, her grip firm. "Talk while we dance," she whispered. "Aunt Evelyn's watching, and I need to know what you're up to." Poirot, an adept dancer despite his compact frame, guided her through the waltz with ease. "Mademoiselle, I have found the necklace, or rather, its replica. It was hidden beneath the fountain, as you suggested, but it is more than a jewel. It conceals a truth about your family, one that someone is desperate to keep buried." Clara's eyes widened, but she kept her voice steady. "What truth? And who's someone?" Poirot glanced at Grayson, who was now speaking with Dr. Marsden near the punch bowl. "That I am still uncovering. But I suspect your family's past holds a wound that has not healed. Tell me, mademoiselle, do you know of a locket, perhaps one you wear?" Clara's hand brushed her neck, where a small silver locket hung. It was my mother's. I've had it since I was a child. Why? May I see it?" Poirot asked, his tone gentle but insistent. As the waltz ended, Clara led him to a quiet alcove, unclasping the locket. Inside was a miniature portrait of a woman with auburn hair Lillian, the same face from the orphanage photograph. On the opposite side was an inscription, "To my daughter, with love eternal." Poirot's pulse quickened. The locket was a link to Lillian's child, possibly Clara herself, tying her to the scandal Beatrice had hidden. "This is most significant," Poirot said, returning the locket. "Your mother, she was connected to the necklace's secret. I must ask, have you ever doubted your place in this family?" Clara's expression darkened. "Sometimes. Aunt Evelyn treats me like an obligation, not family. Charles is kind, but distant. I've always felt out of place." "Why?" Before Poirot could answer, the room plunged into darkness. Gasps filled the air as the chandeliers flickered out, the quartet faltering. Poirot's senses sharpened, his hand closing round the necklace in his pocket. Seconds later, the lights returned, revealing a scene of controlled chaos. Lady Evelyn stood at the room's center, her face pale, pointing to a now empty display case on a side table. "The necklace," she cried. "It's gone." Poirot's eyes narrowed. The case had held a sapphire necklace, another replica, he suspected, displayed to maintain the family's facade. Its theft during the blackout was no coincidence. He scanned the room, noting Grayson's absence and Charles's trembling hands. Clara gripped his arm, her voice urgent. "Did you take it?" "Nan," Mademoiselle Poirot said. "But someone did, and they wished to make a spectacle of it." He moved swiftly to Lady Evelyn, who was calming the guests with forced composure. "Madame, permit me to assist. A theft under such circumstances is most distressing, but I am skilled in such matters." Lady Evelyn's eyes bore into his, her voice icy. "This is a family matter, Monsieur Poirot. I'll handle it." But Poirot was undeterred. He circulated among the guests, listening to their whispers. A villager mentioned seeing a figure slip out a side door during the blackout, and Dr. Marsden noted Grayson's sudden exit. Poirot's suspicions deepened. Grayson, or his mysterious client, might be behind the theft. But the timing suggested an inside accomplice. As the ball resumed, Poirot slipped into the corridor, following the path to the side door. Therein, the moonlight, he found a dropped handkerchief embroidered with the initials C.H. Charles Haverford. Had Charles staged the theft to distract from Poirot's discoveries, or was he a pawn in a larger game? Poirot pocketed the handkerchief, his mind racing. Returning to the ballroom, he found Clara waiting, her locket now tucked beneath her dress. "You're not giving up, are you?" she said, her tone half challenging, half hopeful. "Never," Mademoiselle Poirot replied. "But I must ask you to be cautious. The thief is bold, and the stakes are high." As the night ended, Poirot left the manor, the fog wrapping around him like a cloak. The stolen replica, the locket's clue, and Grayson's absence were pieces of a puzzle that pointed to a truth about Clara's lineage. The chapter closed with Poirot clutching the real necklace, hidden in his coat, and the realization that the ball's drama had only tightened the web of deception with Clara at its heart. Chapter 7. The Ghost of the Past. The fog of St. Aldan had lifted slightly, revealing a sky of bruised clouds as Hercule Poirot made his way along a muddy lane on the village outskirts. The sapphire necklace confirmed as a replica by Edwards. Later on, Clara's locket, with its portrait of Lillian, weighed heavily in his pocket. The theft of the displayed necklace at the Haverford ball the previous night had been a bold distraction, and the handkerchief with Charles's initials suggested complicity within the family. But Clara's revelation about her locket, hinting at her connection to Lillian's banished child, had shifted Poirot's focus. Beatrice's diary mentioned a second heirloom, a ring tied to the same scandal. To unravel the mystery, Poirot needed to trace Lillian's story beyond the orphanage, and a lead from the village vicar pointed him to a retired nurse living in a cottage beyond the yew grove. The nurse, Mrs. Agnes Poole, was a woman of 70, her face etched with lines like a map of a hard life. Her cottage was modest, its windows framed with wilted roses, and the air inside smelled of chamomile and liniment. She greeted Poirot with a wary nod, her hands trembling as she poured tea from a chipped pot. "Monsieur Poirot," the vicar said. "You'd come asking about old times," she said, her voice raspy but clear. "What's a man like you want with a place like St. Aldan?" Poirot smiled, his demeanour warm yet probing. "Madame Poole, I am a seeker of truths, and St. Aldan holds many. I am interested in the Haverfords, particularly a young woman named Lillian, who was at the orphanage in 1898. You were a nurse there, Nan." Agnes's eyes flickered, her fingers tightening round her cup. Lillian Haverford, poor thing. She was a bright child, full of spirit, but marked by her mother's shame. The Haverfords disowned her mother for marrying beneath her a gardener. Of all things, when Lillian's mother died, the family sent the girl to the orphanage to wash their hands of her. Poirot leaned forward, his voice gentle. "And the necklace, Madame. The sapphire heirloomit was tied to this scandal, perhaps. Agnes hesitated, her gaze drifting to a faded photograph on the mantel, a young woman with auburn hair, unmistakably Lillian. The necklace was a gift, or so the story went. Old Mr. Haverford gave it to Lillian's mother to silence her, to keep her from claiming her place in the family. But there was another heirloom ring, gold with a single sapphire. Lillian wore it when she came to the orphanage, but it was taken from her. I always thought Beatrice hid it to protect the girl's claim. Poirot's pulse quickened. The ring, mentioned in Beatrice's diary, was real, and its connection to Lillian confirmed Clara's lineage as the child of that forbidden union. "Do you know where this ring might be, Madame Poole?" Agnes shook her head. Beatrice was secretive, even with me. She visited Lillian sometimes, against the family's wishes. If she hid the ring, it's in the manner where no one would think to look. She was clever like that. As Poirot thanked her and rose to leave, Agnes gripped his arm, her eyes fierce. "Be careful, monsieur. The Haverfords don't take kindly to their secrets being aired, and there's others in this village who'd kill to keep them buried." Her warning echoed as Poirot returned to the village, the photograph of Lillian and Agnes's words painting a clearer picture. Clara, with her locket and auburn hair, was likely Lillian's daughter, the rightful heir to a legacy the Haverford had suppressed. The ring, if found, could prove it, but its hiding place remained elusive. Poirot resolved to search the manor again, focusing on Beatrice's private spaces. At the Black Boar Inn, he found a note slipped under his door, written in a hurried scrawl. "Meet me at the church at dusk. Urgent. C.H. Charles Haverford." Poirot assumed, though the initials could also belong to Clara. The timing was suspicious, coming so soon after the ball's theft. He pocketed the note, his instincts alert and prepared for the evening. The church was silent as dusk fell, its steeple a dark silhouette against the fading light. Poirot arrived early, his cane tapping softly on the stone path. Inside, the air was cool, scented with wax and old wood. Charles stood by the altar, his face pale, his hands trembling as he clutched a prayer book. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice low, "I need your help. That handkerchief at the Bollet was mine, but I didn't steal the necklace. Someone's trying to frame me." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Monsieur Charles, why should I believe you? The theft was a distraction, and your initials place you at the scene." Charles's voice cracked. "I know how it looks, but I swear I'm innocent. I was in the corridor during the blackout, trying to find Clarached, been acting strangely. I dropped the handkerchief by accident. Someone else took the necklace to make it look like I did. And who might this someone be?" Poirot asked, his tone sharp. Charles glanced at the church door, as if expecting an eavesdropper. "I don't know, but Mother's been on edge since you arrived, and Grayson he's been asking questions about things he shouldn't know. I think he's working for someone who wants to ruin us." Before Poirot could probe further, a scream shattered the silence, echoing from the churchyard. He and Charles rushed outside, finding Clara crumpled by a gravestone, her dress torn, her face bruised. "Someone pushed me," she gasped, clutching her locket. "I was coming to meet you, Charles, and they came out of nowhere." Poirot knelt beside her, his mind racing. The attack was no random act, it was a warning, timed to disrupt his investigation. He helped Clara to her feet, noting the absence of footsteps in the damp earth. The attacker had been careful, perhaps familiar with the churchyard's layout. Back at the manor, Poirot insisted on accompanying Clara and Charles, his presence a shield against further threats. In the library, he searched Beatrice's desk, recalling Agnes's words about her cleverness. A false panel in a bookshelf caught his eye, revealing a small compartment. Inside was a gold ring, its sapphire glinting faintly, wrapped in a note for Lillian's heir when the time comes. Poirot pocketed the ring, his heart pounding. The second heirloom was found, but the scream in the churchyard signaled danger closing in. As he left the library, he caught a whiff of tobacco, the same scent from the manor's corridor days ago. The watcher was near, and the truth about Lillian's legacy was within reach. The chapter closed with Poirot standing in the manor's shadowed hall, the ring and necklace in his possession, and the certainty that the next move would provoke the unseen enemy into the open. Chapter 8. The mask falls. The moon hung low over St. Aldan, its pale light cutting through the fog as Hercule Poirot stood in the courtyard of Haverford Manor, the sapphire necklace, the ring, and Edward's letter secure in his coat. The attack on Clara in the churchyard had escalated the stakes, confirming that someone was desperate to halt his investigation. The gold ring, found in Beatrice's hidden compartment, was the second heirloom tied to Lillian's disowned lineage and Clara's. Locket suggested she was the rightful heir to a legacy the Haverfords had buried. The tobacco scent, lingering from the manor's corridors to the churchyard, hinted at a persistent watcher and Mr. Grayson's role as a private investigator, hired by an unknown client, added a shadow of external intrigue. Poirot's little grey cells were alight, sensing the moment to unmask a key player was near. The morning after the attack, Poirot returned to the manor, ostensibly to check on Clara's recovery. Lady Evelyn received him in the morning room, her composure strained, her eyes darting to the door as if expecting an interruption. Charles sat nearby, his face haggard, while Clara, a bruise blooming on her cheek, managed a defiant smile. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, "you're like a cat with 9 lives, always turning up where you're least expected." Poirot bowed, his tone light but probing. "Mademoiselle Clara, it is my nature to pursue the truth, especially when it is threatened by violence. Your attacker, they were most bold. Have you any suspicion who it might be?" Clara shook her head, her hand brushing her locket. It was dark, and they were quick. "But it's no coincidence, is it? You're getting too close to something." Lady Evelyn's voice cut in, sharp as glass. "Enough, Clara. Monsieur Poirot, I've asked you to leave our affairs alone. This incident only proves the village is unsafe for meddling outsiders." Poirot met her gaze, unflinching. "Madame, with respect, the danger is not in my presence, but in the secrets you guard. The necklace, the ring, they are no mere trinkets. They speak of a past your family has hidden, and someone is willing to harm to keep it so." Charles flinched, his voice barely a whisper. "Mother, perhaps we should tell him." "Silence, Charles." Lady Evelyn snapped, her controls slipping. "Monsieur Poirot, you will leave this house at once." But Poirot was not so easily dismissed. He had a plan to force the truth into the open. Returning to the Black Boar Inn, he found Mr. Grayson in the common room, his notebook recovered, but his demeanour uneasy. Poirot decided to confront him, using the stolen notebook as leverage. "Monsieur Grayson," he said, settling opposite him, "your client. They seek the necklace for its secrets, Nan. I have found it a replica, as you may know, and a ring. That tells a story of betrayal. Who is this client, and what do they hope to gain?" Grayson's jaw tightened, but he leaned forward, his voice low. "I'm not at liberty to say, Poirot, but my client is a Haverforder distant cousin, wronged by the family decades ago. They believe the necklace and ring prove their claim. To the estate, I was hired to find them discreetly. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A cousin exiled from the family, seeking to reclaim their birthright. This was the missing piece. And this cousin, they are impatient, perhaps, enough to orchestrate a theft at the ball or an attack in the churchyard. Grayson paled. I don't know about any attack. I took the necklace from the display. Case it was a chance to get closer to the truth. But I swear I didn't touch Clara. Poirot studied him, sensing truth laced with omission. Theft of the replica was a calculated move, but the attack on Clara suggested another hand. He decided to stage a confrontation, gathering the key players to expose the truth. He sent a note to Lady Evelyn, requesting an urgent meeting at the manor, claiming he had evidence that could not wait. To Grayson, he issued a veiled challenge. Be at the manor this evening, monsieur, or your client's secrets may be revealed. Without you, that evening, the manor's drawing room was a stage set for revelation. Lady Evelyn sat rigid, Charles fidgeted, and Clara watched with keen interest. Grayson arrived, his presence met with icy stares. Poirot stood at the room's center, his voice calm but commanding. Madame et messieurs, we are here to unmask a truth. The sapphire necklace, stolen at the ball, is a replica, as is the one I found beneath the fountain. The ring, however, is real, and it proves a child Lillian's was cast out by this family. Mademoiselle Clara, I believe, is her heir. Lady Evelyn's face drained of colour. This is preposterous. Clara is my niece, nothing more. Poirot held up the ring, its sapphire catching the light. This was Beatrice's gift too. Lillian's child, hidden to protect her claim. Monsieur Grayson, your client, a Haverford cousin, seeks this ring to challenge the estate. But who attacked Mademoiselle Clara? That is the question. Grayson shifted, his voice tense. I told you, it wasn't me. My client wants the ring. Not violence. Before Poirot could press further, Mr. Harrow burst in, his face flushed. Sir, there's been a break-in. Someone's in your room at the inn. Poirot's mind raced. A distraction, perhaps, but an opportunity. He excused himself, hurrying to the inn with Grayson in tow. His room was ransacked, but the necklace and ring were safe in his coat. Hidden in a drawer, however, was a crumpled note in a familiar hand. Stop, or Clara pays the price. The tobacco scent lingered, and Poirot's eyes narrowed. The attacker was close, and Grayson's client was not the only threat. Returning to the manor, Poirot staged a final gambit. He gathered the household, including the staff, and revealed the note. Someone among us wishes to silence the truth. He said, Monsieur Grayson, your client's name, si vous plot. Under pressure, Grayson relented. It's Margaret Haverford, a cousin living in York. She hired me to find the ring and prove her claim over Charles's. Lady Evelyn gasped, but Poirot's attention shifted to Mr. Harrow, whose hands trembled. Monsieur Harrow, Poirot said, you have been most attentive to this household, but the scent of your tobacco betrays you. You attacked Mademoiselle Clara, Nan, to protect your mistress's secrets. Harrow's composure cracked, his voice hoarse. I had to. Lady Evelyn's all I've got. The truth about the ring, it'd ruin her. The room fell silent, the mask of loyalty falling from Harrow. Poirot nodded, satisfied. The chapter closed with Harrow's confession, the ring and necklace in Poirot's hands, and the realization that Clara's heritage was the key to the Haverford legacy with one final truth yet to be unveiled. Chapter 9. The Family's Truth. The Heir in Haverford. Manner's drawing room was thick with the weight of revelation as Hercule Poirot stood at its centre, the sapphire necklace and gold ring gleaming in his hands. Mr. Harrow's confession that he had attacked Clara to protect Lady Evelyn's secrets had cracked the facade of the Haverford legacy. The necklace, a replica hiding a shameful sale, and the ring, proof of Lillian's disowned child, pointed to Clara as the true heir. Mr. Grayson's admission that he was hired by Margaret Haverford, a distant cousin seeking to claim the estate, had exposed an external threat, but Poirot sensed the heart of the mystery lay within the Manor's walls. The tobacco-scented note threatening Clara, found in his ransacked room, suggested a deeper conspiracy, one he was determined to unravel. Tonight, Lady Evelyn sat rigid, her silver hair catching the firelight, her eyes blazing with defiance. Charles, pale and trembling, clutched the arm of his chair, while Clara, her bruise stark against her cheek, watched Poirot with a mix of awe and apprehension. Grayson stood apart, his investigator's mask slipping, revealing a man caught in a game larger than he'd anticipated. The Manor staff, summoned at Poirot's request, hovered at the edges, their faces a mix of fear and curiosity. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice steady, commanding attention. "We stand at the precipice of truth. The sapphire necklace, this ring, they are not mere jewels, but keys to a secret the Haverfords have guarded for decades. Mademoiselle Clara, you are at the heart of this tale, and it is time the shadows are brought to light." Lady Evelyn's voice cut through, sharp as a blade. "You've gone too far, Monsieur Poirot. These are private matters, and you've no right to air them." Poirot raised a hand, his gaze unwavering. "Madame, the truth respects no boundaries. Let us begin with the necklace. It is a replica, as Edward's letter confirms, sold by your father-in-law to cover debts in 1897. Beatrice, your sister, hid this truth to protect the family's honor, yes." Lady Evelyn's lips tightened, but she said nothing, her silence a confirmation. Poirot turned to Clara, holding up the ring. "This ring was meant for Lillian's child, your mother, mademoiselle. The locket you wear, with her portrait, proves your lineage. You are the rightful heir to the Haverford estate, not Monsieur Charles." Charles gasped, his voice breaking. "Clara, the heir, but I've always been—" "You've been what we told you," Lady Evelyn interrupted her, tone icy but trembling. "Clara was taken in as a niece, for appearances. Her mother's scandal marrying a gardener, bearing a child out of wedlock would have ruined us. We did what was necessary." Clara's eyes widened, her hand clutching the locket. "You knew all this time? You knew I was Lillian's daughter, and you lied to me." Poirot stepped forward, his voice gentle but firm. "Mademoiselle, the truth was buried to protect the family's name, but it has cost you your birthright. The ring, hidden by Beatrice, was meant to ensure your claim when the time came. But someone sought to keep it, hidden someone who attacked you in the churchyard." All eyes turned to Mr. Harrow, who stood by the door, his face ashen. "I confessed," he said hoarsely. "I pushed Miss Clara to scare her off, to stop her asking questions. Lady Evelyn's been good to me, I couldn't let the family fall." Poirot's moustache twitched, his eyes narrowing. "Monsieur Harrow, your loyalty is admirable, but your story is incomplete. The note in my room, threatening Mademoiselle Clara, was not in your hand, and the tobacco scent, it lingers around another." He turned to the staff, his gaze settling on a figure at the back. Mrs. Linton, Lady Evelyn's personal maid, a woman with sharp features and a perpetually downturned mouth. "Madame Linton," Poirot said, his voice cutting through the room. "You have been silent, but your presence is not unnoticed. The tobacco you smoke, it is distinctive, Nan. The same scent in the Manor's corridors, the churchyard, my room. It was you who wrote the note, and you who attacked Mademoiselle Clara, not out of loyalty, but fear." Mrs. Linton's hands trembled, her eyes darting to Lady Evelyn. I had to protect the family. If Clara's claim came out, everything would collapse: the estate, our standing. I thought if I scared her, she'd leave. Lady Evelyn rose, her voice a low hiss. "Linton, you fool. You acted without my knowledge." Poirot nodded, satisfied. "Madame Linton acted alone, believing she served you, madame. But her actions betray a deeper truth, the fear that Clara's heritage would undo the Haverford legacy. Monsieur Grayson, your client Margaret, sought the ring to claim the estate, but the true threat was within these walls." Clara stood, her voice steady despite her bruise. "I don't want the estate if it means lies and secrets, but I want the truth, Aunt Evelyn. Why did you hide who I am?" Lady Evelyn's shoulders sagged, the fight draining from her. "Because I was ashamed. Your mother, Lillian, defied us, and I let my pride rule. When she died, I took you in, but I couldn't face the scandal. Beatrice wanted to tell you, but I forbade it. The ring, I didn't know where she hid it." Poirot handed the ring to Clara, its sapphire glinting. "Mademoiselle, this is yours, as is your place in this family. The truth is now yours to wield." The room fell silent, the weight of decades lifting. Grayson cleared his throat, his voice subdued. "My client will be disappointed, but I'll tell her the truth is out. There's no claim left to make." Poirot nodded, his work nearly done. The Haverfords must now face their past, not hide from it. "Madame Linton, you will answer for your actions, but I believe Mademoiselle Clara will show mercy." Clara met his gaze, her eyes bright with resolve. "I will, Monsieur Poirot. I want to start anew, not with secrets, but with honesty." As the staff dispersed and Lady Evelyn retreated, Poirot felt a quiet satisfaction. The mystery was resolved. Necklace a symbol of shame, the ring a beacon of truth, and Clara's heritage restored. He left the manor, the fog parting to reveal a starlit sky, and returned to the inn. Ready to depart St. Aldan, the chapter closed with Clara standing in the manor's doorway, the ring on her finger, embracing a future unburdened by lies. Chapter 10. The little grey cells triumph. The train to London rattled gently through the early morning mist, its rhythm a soothing counterpoint to the whirlwind of St. Aldan's secrets. Hercule Poirot sat in a private compartment, his polished cane resting beside him, a cup of steaming hot chocolate cradled in his hands. The sapphire necklace and gold ring, now entrusted to Clara Haverford, were no longer his burden, but their weight lingered in his mind. The case, resolved in the Manor's drawing-room the previous night, had unveiled a family's buried shame. The necklace, a replica masking a long-ago betrayal. The ring, proof of Clara's true heritage as Lillian's heir, and Mrs. Linton's desperate act to protect Lady Evelyn's pride. The anonymous letter that had drawn him to St. Aldan, penned by Beatrice's ghost through Clara's discovery of the diary, had set this truth in motion. Now, as the countryside blurred past, Poirot reflected on the triumph of his little grey cells in his London flat. The air was crisp with the scent of polished wood and fresh flowers, a stark contrast to St. Alden's fog-laden mystery. Poirot settled at his desk, a mahogany haven of order, and opened his notebook, its pages filled with meticulous notes on the Haverford case. The resolution had been satisfying. Clara, embracing her identity as Lillian's daughter, had chosen to restore the Haverford legacy with transparency, vowing to use the estate's resources to aid the village. Lady Evelyn, humbled by the truth, had agreed to step back, allowing Clara to lead. Charles, relieved of the burden of an inheritance he never truly wanted, had expressed quiet support. Mrs. Linton, remorseful, faced village justice, her punishment tempered by Clara's mercy. Mr. Grayson, his mission for Margaret Haverford thwarted, had left St. Alden, his client's claim nullified by Clara's rightful place. Poirot sipped his hot chocolate, its warmth grounding him. The case had been a puzzle of human passions, pride, shame, loyalty, and redemption. The necklace, a symbol of deceit, had been returned to the manor's vault, no longer a secret but a reminder of lessons learned. The ring, now on Clara's finger, was a beacon of her resolve to forge a new path. Yet one question lingered: who had watched him in the fog, beyond Mrs. Linton's actions? The tobacco scent, the fleeting shadows, perhaps a villager curious about his presence, or a final ghost of the Haverford past. Poirot smiled, accepting that some mysteries remained just out of reach, adding flavour to the triumph of those solved. He took up his pen, drafting a letter to Clara. "Mademoiselle," he wrote, "the truth you now hold is a powerful thing. Use it to heal, to build, and to honour those who came before, like your great-aunt Beatrice. The Haverfords are yours to redefine." He paused, then added, "Should you ever need the services of Hercule Poirot, you know where to find me." Sealing the letter, Poirot leaned back, his eyes tracing the familiar lines of his flat. The case had changed him, subtly but profoundly. St. Alden's fog had tested his intellect, but it was the human heart, Clara's courage, Lady Evelyn's pride, even Mrs. Linton's misguided loyalty, that reminded him why he pursued justice. It was not merely to solve puzzles, but to restore balance, to give voice to the silenced dot. Outside, London bustled, oblivious to the drama of a small village. Poirot closed his notebook, its pages a testament to a case that would fade from public memory but remain etched in his own. He rose, adjusting his tie with a flourish, and stepped to the window, the city's lights a mosaic of stories yet untold. The Haverford mystery was complete, its truths laid bare, and Poirot was content. His little grey cells had triumphed, and St. Alden, though forgotten by the world, had reshaped his faith in the power of truth to heal. The chapter and the case, with Poirot raising his cup in a silent toast to Clara, to justice, and to the mysteries that awaited, certain that his mind would always find order in chaos.